Hello everyone and welcome back to another Marvel Champions video. Today Fantasy Flight reveals some new cards for the upcoming Nebula deck. So Nebula was kind of leaked a little bit, or at least leaked in the fact that there would be a Nebula hero pack. So these are some of the cards that are going to be in that hero pack. Fantasy Flight has an official article up on their website. There'll be a link in the description to check that out. But so first up here we have Nebula. This is her alter ego side. Hand size is 6 with 9 hit points. She's an outlaw, recovery of 3. Cybernetic upgrades as a response. After you play a technique upgrade, draw 2 cards, limit once per round. So basically you can play one of these upgrades on her while in alter ego form. You then get to draw 2 cards, and then you could potentially flip over to her hero side, and then basically you get if you have a upgrade in your hand or a technique upgrade in your hand when you first start the game, it's probably going to be beneficial to put that on her before you flip her into hero form, but then you get to draw those 2 extra cards. So that is the alter ego to Nebula. We're going to go ahead and take a look at her hero side. We'll be right back with that. And we are now back with Nebula on her hero side. So hand size goes down to 5, still has 9 hit points, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense. She's a guardian. Combat protocols as a force response. After your turn begins, resolve the special ability on each technique upgrade you control, then discard each technique upgrade resolved this way. So basically kind of very similar to how the Nebula villain plays, where when Nebula activates against a character, basically all the special abilities on the technique upgrades get used, and then those cards get discarded. So very similar to that, where beginning of each of your turns, whatever technique upgrades you have, basically you activate the specials and then discard them. Just this off the bat really makes me want to not play this hero against the Collector, because I imagine once you discard those technique upgrades with this ability, they'll go to the collection. Hopefully there's like a clarification where maybe you can bypass that there's some way to bypass that, hopefully. I don't know, that just feels like a very fast way to just add a ton of cards to the Collector's collection and kind of also make one of the main features of the character kind of not be very fun, just because like basically every turn all your technique upgrades are going to be going to the Collector. That's just like that's just a scenario I could see happening, so hopefully there's a way around that. We'll have to wait and see. But again, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense, and again the combat protocols are basically beginning of each turn you're going to resolve the special ability on each technique upgrade and then discard them. So that is Nebula. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Evasive Maneuvers. It's a 1-cost upgrade. It generates an energy resource if you discard it. It's a technique upgrade. So while in hero form, Nebula ignores the guard keyword, patrol keyword, and crisis icon. So basically she can get around guard, so minions that are engaged with her that have guard, normally you can't attack the villain. She can attack the villain because this allows you to ignore that. Patrol generally means you cannot thwart the main scheme while those minions are engaged. She gets around that. And then the crisis icon, she gets around that, which means generally if a scheme has the crisis icon, you need to get rid of that particular scheme before you can go after the main scheme. So that's pretty cool. And then as the special ability, so basically on the beginning of a turn, if this is in play, you could either choose to stun or to confuse the enemy, and then you discard the card. So I think this is a pretty cool way to get around, again, minions of guard, patrol, and crisis icons. So that is Evasive Maneuvers. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Unyielding Persistence. 1-cost upgrade. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. It's another technique upgrade. And while in hero form, Nebula gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, and gains stalwart, meaning you cannot be stunned or confused. And then as a special ability, give Nebula a tough status card, and then it gets discarded. So pretty good card, because especially like if you play this on during your turn, and then it goes to the villain turn, and the villain does something that would say like stun you or something like that, you won't be able to get stunned or confused because of stalwart. And then also on the turn that you play it, you get +1 thwart and +1 attack. It's pretty good. And then I like the special because you basically get a tough status, meaning that the next time you get attacked, you basically just get rid of that tough icon or tough status instead of taking damage. So that is Unyielding Persistence. We're going to move into our next card. And next up is Wide Stance. It's a 1-cost upgrade, generates an energy resource if you discard it. It's another technique upgrade. And while Nebula is in hero form, reduce the amount of damage he takes from each attack by 1. So basically, you just have a 1. You take 1 less damage per attack, which is nice. It's not just one attack if multiple people attack you. Like, let's say the villain attacks you and minions also attack you. You reduce all that damage from each attack by 1. And then special, look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck. Discard 1 and put the others back in any order. So it lets you take a look at the encounter deck. If you're playing with characters that do stuff based on what's in the encounter deck, like Scarlet Witch or something like that, you can basically like put a card on top of it. That Scarlet Witch can then use to deal damage with some of her abilities. So again, you basically reduce all damage or all attacks by 1, which is good, and then you get to kind of mess with the encounter deck as well. So that is Wide Stance. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Combat Ready. It's a 0-cost event. Generates a physical resource if you discard it. It's a skill, and it's an alter ego action. Choose 1. Shuffle up to 2 technique upgrades from your discard pile into your deck, or discard cards on the top of your deck until you discard a technique upgrade. Put that upgrade into play, then resolve its special ability. So basically, option 1 lets you get back 2 technique upgrades, shuffle back into your deck. So basically, like whenever she's on hero form, and she activates, or basically her turn begins, you resolve all the special abilities on all of her technique upgrades, and then they get discarded. This allows you to recur some of the technique upgrades that you might want to get back. That's a good option. And then the second one is also pretty good. So discard cards on the top of the deck until you discard a technique upgrade, put it into play, and then resolve its special ability. So you basically get the upgrade on her, you get to use the special, and then your turn continues. So basically, it gives you almost 2 uses out of that special, if that makes sense. So you get the special use of the special for playing the card with this, and then let's say you flip her over into hero form. You can then attack, thwart, do whatever, and you'll still get the special on your next turn because the technique upgrades don't get discarded until the beginning of your next turn. So basically, you have at very least in hero form, if you stay in hero form, I should say, you get to use those abilities at least. You use the card, use the effect of the card, and then on your next turn, the special ability goes off. It gets discarded. But then if you are flipping between hero and alter ego form, I imagine that those techniques will stick around, so you can kind of time them in such a way that like you might say like, cool, I'm going to use this ability now, discard it on your next turn, or maybe even at the end of your turn before you even do that. Let's say you would use your special ability here. You then flip into hero form, do something, and then maybe play another event that'll let you flip back into alter ego form. You can keep those upgrades on you. You can maybe build up like a huge like special chain, essentially. It's going to be interesting to see if there are any cards in her deck that allow her to flip her more than once per turn. So normally this is on alter ego, so you play it when she's already flipped, and then if you haven't flipped yet, you can then flip her to hero form, and I imagine we'll maybe see cards that let her go back to alter ego form. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But combat ready, both effects are really cool, so you can either basically recur technique upgrades or dig for a technique upgrade. You kind of can't choose it. It's just whatever one comes up first, and then you get to play it, and resolve the special. So that is combat ready. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Lethal Intent. It's an X-cost event. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. It's a hero action. Choose up to X technique upgrades you control. Resolve each of your special abilities in the order of your choice. So again, this is a way to use the specials on your technique upgrades without having them get discarded. So basically, you want to use this. You have to use it in hero form. So basically, what you can do is basically get a bunch of upgrades on your character, use Lethal Intent, or potentially like, let's say like stage 1 in one time you can basically load her up on techniques, flip her back into alter ego mode, so when her turn starts in her next turn starts, the abilities don't trigger. Flip over into hero form, play Lethal Intent, because I don't think you're going to have enough resources to play a bunch of these plus Lethal Intent. So, but basically flip into hero form, play Lethal Intent, trigger all the special abilities in the order that you want, and then on your next turn, if you're still in hero form, they'll trigger again and then get discarded. So it looks like there's going to be a little bit of having to kind of time stuff right so you are getting the most out of your technique upgrades before you discard them. So Lethal Intent seems like a really interesting card just because you can basically pay X and trigger, basically, let's say you have 3 upgrades, you pay 3 resources, trigger all 3 of them in whatever order you want, potentially flip back into alter ego form if you haven't already. And then, when you're in hero form, so they're basically being able to flip between hero form and alter ego form is going to allow you to keep some of those upgrades on her for a little bit longer. So that is Lethal Intent. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Eros, or Eros. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. 2-cost ally, generates a mental resource if you discard it. 2 thwart for 1 consequential damage, and 1 attack for 1 consequential damage. Comes with 2 hit points. And after you play Eros from your hand, confuse a minion for each resource, or each mental resource used to pay for him. So basically, 2 mental resources, he comes out with that, comes in, and then confuses 2 minions, and again, comes in with 2 hit points. And then probably going to be better at thwart just because it's 2 thwart for 1 damage or 1 attack for 1 damage. So basically you can get a total of, remove a total of 4 threat from schemes if you're just using his thwart. But it's pretty interesting that he comes in and he confuses minions. So then like if you are in alter ego form, when those minions do go to activate against you, they'll just get rid of the confusion tokens instead. So that is Eros. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Venom, Flash Thompson. We actually have this deck, I believe, coming out next after Drax. So 4-cost ally, generates an energy resource if you discard it. It's a Guardian, comes in with 4 hit points. And 2 thwart for 2 consequential damage and 3 attack for 2 consequential damage. And while there's no threat on the main scheme, reduce all consequential damage Venom takes by 1. So basically it becomes a 2 for 1 or a 3 for 1. If the main scheme has no threat on it. So he does have a pretty good thwart for 2, so basically 2 for 2, and his attack is also pretty good, so with 3 damage for 2, but then basically it becomes, again, 1 consequential each if there's no threat on the main scheme, and if you're playing other things to remove scheme, he can come in and hit for quite a bit. So let's say there's no damage on, or nothing on the scheme, he can basically attack 4 times, do a total of 12 damage, and as long as you keep the main scheme clear. So that is Venom, Flash Thompson. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Justice Served. It's a 1-cost upgrade. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. And as a hero response, after you thwart or remove the last threat from a scheme, discard Justice Served to ready your hero. So it comes in. Basically, you clear off a scheme. Doesn't have to be the main scheme. Just could be, looks like it's any scheme. And then basically when you defeat a scheme, or at least remove all damage from even the main scheme, you basically get rid of this and ready your hero. So your hero is ready to go again, which you can like thwart other schemes or attack again, things like that. So that is Justice Served. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Brains Over Brawn. It's a 2-cost event. It generates a physical resource if you discard it. It's an attack. So hero response, attack. After your hero makes a basic thwart, deal damage to an enemy equal to your hero's thwart. So basically you're going to thwart, let's say you thwart for 2, you remove 2 threats from a scheme, and then after you basically make that thwart, you deal whatever your thwart value is. So 2 in this case, to an enemy. So it's a good way to, remove threat from a scheme and also get damage out of it at the same time. It's a pretty good card. So that is Brains Over Brawn. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Gamora. This is the Gamora ally card. So 3 resources. Let's see. Generates a wild resource if you discard it. Comes in with 2 thwart for 1 consequential damage and 2 attack for 1 consequential damage. Comes in with 3 hit points. She's a guardian, and after you play Gamora, choose a technique upgrade you control, then resolve its special ability. So basically a way to use those special abilities on Nebula's technique upgrades at least 1 extra time before they trigger and get discarded. So that is Gamora. I like her. So like 3 cost, comes in with 3, 2 and 2, and then basically lets you trigger a one of your techniques. So that is the ally of Gamora, the ally version of Gamora. I believe there is an ally version of Gamora in the Drax deck as well. That is it's a gray, so it can go in any deck. This one is specific to Nebula. So that version of Gamora can only be in Nebula decks. But that's that card. We're going to move into our next card here. And next up, we have Daughters of Thanos. One cost event generates a wild resource if you discard it. It's a team up card, so team up for Gamora and Nebula, max 1 per deck. Hero action, draw 3 cards. So basically, pay 1 as long as you're controlling both Nebula and Gamora. Doesn't matter which versions of them you're controlling. It could be hero version of one, ally version of the other, or vice versa. Basically, as long as you have one of each of them in play, you can only include one of this in each deck, it looks like. But draw 3. So draw 3 is a pretty good card. You do have to be a hero from to do it, but basically, as long as you have Gamora and Nebula, you get to draw 3. Pretty simple, pretty good. So that is Daughters of Thanos. We're going to move into our final card. And our final card is the minion version of Gamora. So just like the Gamora deck, we're getting an ally version. Like we got an ally version of Nebula and a nemesis version of Nebula in the Gamora deck. And in the Nebula deck, we're getting, again, we like an ally version of Gamora as well as a minion version as well. So Minion Gamora comes in with 2 scheme, 2 attack with an asterisk, comes in with 6 hit points. She's elite and an outlaw. As a force interrupt, when this minion would enter play, discard the Gamora ally from play. So very similar to how the Nebula one works. So basically, if you have the Nebula ally in play and the Nemesis comes in, you get rid of the ally of that as well. And it's a force response. After Gamora attacks and damages you, choose and discard an upgrade you control. So basically, whenever she comes in and attacks, you're going to have to discard and upgrade. I guess if you don't have any upgrades, it doesn't do anything. But basically, she's going to be picking off your technique upgrades and getting rid of them, and that's all you have on you. So you're definitely going to want to handle her, and basically, like as soon as she comes out, you're going to want to get rid of her very quickly, just because you're going to be losing a lot of upgrades if she does attack and damage you. If she doesn't damage you, you don't lose those upgrades. But she has a high hit points here, a high hit points of 6, and then she potentially has ways that if she gets damaged through, you're going to be losing upgrades. Luckily, she doesn't have any at least keywords on her card that give her like overkill or anything like that. So still going to be very dangerous when dealing with the minion version of Gamora. It's going to be interesting if somebody's playing as a hero version of Gamora, and then let's say you're playing Nebula, Gamora, 2 hero decks, and then let's say the Nemesis versions of each of those characters come into play with. It would just be interesting. You can say like, I guess you could just say like they're the evil versions of those characters from like a different timeline or something like that. But it's very interesting that we're having now minions and allies that are also nemesises and so on. So Nebula is a hero, a villain, an ally, and a nemesis. Gamora is now a hero, a minion, and a nemesis. We haven't had a villain Gamora yet. I don't think we'll ever get I don't know if we ever will get a villain Gamora. It would be really cool if we actually did go back and do some of the existing heroes as villains. Like let's say, hey, if Captain America went evil, like this is what he would do, and here's a villain scenario with that in mind. That would be really cool to see. But that's going to do it for this video. So again, there'll be a link in the description to check out the article from Fantasy Flight. Really looking forward to see how this Gamora or this Nebula deck plays out. But again, that's going to do it for this video. So remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll be back again probably technically later tonight when I pick up the Drax decks tomorrow. I'm going to buy the Drax deck. Going to open it. The video will be just like briefly opening it, showing some of the cards off. And then I'll, of course, like I always do, I'll play test the deck, probably against Rhino. That's like my baseline testing is against Rhino. And then I'll let you know what I think of the Drax deck. That should be out, technically, what time is it now? It's like 1 in the morning. So yeah, that does come out today on Friday. So later tonight, I should have a video up with my thoughts on the Drax deck. But that's going to do for now. Thanks again for watching. I want to thank you again. Thanks again, and take care. Have a good one.